Have you ever stopped to think that maybe the biggest loss in your retirement isn't from a mistake you made, but from something that happens silently every month without asking permission? Imagine discovering that, even while following the rules, contributing correctly, and waiting for the right moment, the game changed after you left it. And what's worse, it changed without warning, without clear headlines, without anyone sitting down to explain it to you. That's exactly what's happening right now to millions of retirees. People who believe they're just spending poorly, when in reality, they're being hurt without realizing it. For decades, the logic was simple and repeated endlessly. Work, contribute, wait the minimum time, and in the end, the system will guarantee stable income. That promise shaped lifelong decisions. People stopped pursuing entrepreneurship, postponed dreams, accepted difficult jobs, all sustained by the idea that retirement will be a safe destination. Except that, when that moment finally arrives, something doesn't fit. The bills close, but with effort. Money comes in, but goes out too fast. The month seems to shrink, and an uncomfortable feeling emerges that the promised tranquility stayed in the past. The first impulse is always the same. The person starts blaming themselves. They think they're spending too much at the grocery store, that medication got expensive by bad luck, that the electric bill went up just that month. The individual narrative is convenient because it transfers the problem to the retiree, but it hides an essential fact. There's a set of structural mechanisms working against those living on retirement, and they don't appear explicitly. They don't come with a name, don't come highlighted on the bank statement, don't generate alerts. They simply operate in the background, month after month, eroding purchasing power and pushing retirees into constant adaptation, always downward. One of the central points of this process is in the benefit adjustment. Every beginning of a year, the numbers are released. The benefit was corrected for official inflation. On paper, it seems fair. The index was applied, the amount went up a few dollars, and the initial feeling is relief. But the inflation that adjusts retirement isn't the same inflation that defines the real cost of living for someone who's retired. This difference is crucial and almost never explained. The official index considers a broad average of the population's consumption. Meanwhile, retirees concentrate their spending on items that tend to rise above average. Medications, medical appointments, health insurance, basic food, energy, gas. When these items rise more than the general index, the adjustment becomes insufficient, even if technically correct. The result is a cumulative effect. In 1 year, the difference seems small. In 2, it starts to bother. In 5, the standard of living is no longer the same. And in 10 years, retirees live a completely different reality from what they imagined when making their initial calculations. The problem is that this process is too slow to generate immediate revolt, but fast enough to cause deep damage. It's like silent rust that doesn't break the structure all at once, but continuously weakens it. Another rarely discussed factor is the loss of financial flexibility. When actively working, cost increases can be compensated with extra income, additional hours, job changes, or even new work. In retirement, that flexibility practically disappears. Income becomes fixed, while expenses remain variable and often unpredictable. Any unexpected increase weighs more. Any unforeseen event disrupts the entire month. And this creates a constant state of alert, permanent vigilance over every expense, no matter how small. Over time, that vigilance transforms into restriction. Retirees begin cutting what isn't essential on paper, but is essential for quality of life. First go the small pleasures, then social gatherings. Next, short trips, meals out, gifts for grandchildren. The budget closes, but at the cost of a more limited life. And again, the dominant narrative suggests this is a personal choice, when in reality, it's a forced adaptation to a system that doesn't keep up with reality. There's still another element that worsens this situation: historical lag. Many of today's retirees had their base salaries formed in economic periods completely different from the current one. Currency changes, economic plans, freezes, inflationary losses, and successive reforms affected the calculation basis of countless benefits. These distortions don't disappear over time. They're carried forward, being readjusted year after year on a value that was already compromised at birth. Thus, retirees not only suffer from insufficient adjustments, but also from a benefit origin that often doesn't faithfully reflect their real contributions throughout life. Additionally, there's confusing and fragmented communication. Information arrives in technical form, scattered, often contradictory. Terms like index cap, calculation basis, pension factor, and transition rules aren't part of most people's daily vocabulary. This complexity creates a barrier. Retirees feel something is wrong, but can't pinpoint exactly where. And when you don't understand the problem, it becomes almost impossible to react to it. Another sensitive point is the psychological impact of this process. Retirement, which should represent rest and stability, becomes associated with constant worry, fear of the future, of increasing healthcare costs, of losing financial autonomy. All of this accumulates. It's not just about numbers, but about emotional security. The feeling of always being one step behind, of needing to continuously adapt, wears you down. And this is rarely taken into account when discussing the pension system. There's also the comparison factor. Retirees look back and remember the standard of living they had when working. It wasn't luxury, but there was margin. There were choices. Over the years, that margin disappears. The present seems tighter than the past, even with all the accumulated experience. This silent comparison reinforces the idea that something went wrong along the way, but offers no clear answers. All of this creates a scenario where millions of retirees are being hurt without knowing exactly how or why. There's no explicit villain, no visible deduction, no identifiable extra charge. The harm is in some of small structural imbalances that, together, produce enormous impact. That's precisely why this problem goes unnoticed for so long. It doesn't present itself as a shock, but as continuous wear. And while retirees try to adjust, the system continues operating the same way. Adjustments continue being announced, rules continue being applied, and the sense of normalcy is maintained. But behind that appearance of order, there's a reality that's increasingly distancing itself from the original promise. The promise of tranquility, predictability, and dignity in retirement clashes with the practice of a benefit that loses strength over time. Understanding this process is the first step to stop blaming yourself and start seeing the problem as it really is. It's not about individual incapacity, nor a simple lack of financial control. It's about a system that doesn't keep up with the real changes in the cost of living for those who depend exclusively on it. As long as this difference isn't clearly recognized and discussed, the harm will continue happening, silent, constant, and deeply impactful. That's why, when observing the reality of so many retirees today, it becomes evident that the biggest problem isn't just how much you receive, but how that amount behaves over time. The money doesn't disappear all at once. It loses strength month after month, year after year. And when perception finally arrives, much of the damage has already been done. That's how many retirees are being hurt, without knowing it, not from an isolated mistake, but from a set of factors operating outside the field of vision, transforming retirement into something very different from what was once promised.